So, where did NGS go wrong? Today, I will be talking about some of the things that NGS either didn't do well enough or just didn't support their systems. NGS could have easily been an experience enjoyed for the entirety of the 6 months it's been out for all playstyles. So, let's dive in. Let's start with Cocoons. Cocoons are a one-time rewarded content with repeatability. They have no equipment drops tied to them and no system supporting in-game repeatability outside of the fact they have an inbuilt timer. For starters, Cocoons could have easily had a scaled up elite mode, which offered a challenge to a group of 4 or a single player. They, in combination with the previous point, could also have equipment tied to completing the elite mode, or even Cocoon-specific augments that can only be used by Cocoon gear. In addition to this, they could have had an in-game leaderboard to encourage players to speedrun it more often. These combined would create a healthy speedrunning content loop, rather than just farming Bujin constantly for the fastest time. It would also open up less combat-focused Cocoons to speedrun achievements. There is way more that could have been easily done with Cocoons, but I'll leave it at that for now. Next up, we have the open world. The open world feels pretty empty, and in some cases small. The way that the open world loops content for PC burst or etc. forces the player to run halfway across the map sometimes. Instead of emergency and trigger quests spawning this way, they could instead have a chance of spawning after the player defeats a group of enemies, and the quest can erupt on top of the player like it did in base game. This would make grinding more involved as enemies can more naturally come out of the woodwork at the player. Not to mention, enemy spawning feels unnatural to begin with. Having more animations of enemies spawning out of bushes or trees would be a plus. Just making enemy spawns more natural would be a plus in general. Urgent quests and triggers. To be honest, the urgent quests and triggers we got are alone fine in a vacuum. The problem is we just need more of both categories. A Datal Sword UQ is actually missing if you look at the game in the perspective of augments. The trigger quests are okay. Both are great bits of content that could be done more, but they mostly end up being like Tokyo or other bonus keys from base game, rather than actual triggers. This is okay, but they just really didn't add anything new to the game between them, and were mostly catch-up systems. Of course, the color variants drop for Straga too, so that is one use for the purple battle tier, but to me, it still seems a bit lacking. Events. They needed an urgent quest tied to them being real, and in general, they needed support from other systems which didn't exist in the game. I have said this before, but the events would have been a lot better if content outside them was more solid and rewarding. The events we got did improve when we got to the Halloween event, however not by much. Seasonal weapons are okay, but suffer from lack of enemy diversity and enemies that are actually weak to their element outside the event. Of course, ignoring Frostal. I think that they could all have also been 4-star, but with lower attack power personally as well. But that is more of a nitpick. Equipment. I think most will agree, apart from fashion, equipment acquisition has been a huge motivator for doing anything in Pso2. While NGS equipment cycle hasn't been bad, it definitely could have been better. From base game weapons being 4-star to how close the weapons are number-wise, a lot of this could just have been better. Weapon design in NGS is borderline non-existent, ending with the look of the weapon itself. The weapons so far have been just stat sticks, and haven't really forced the players to change their playstyle or adapt to the weapon's disadvantages. The same goes for units, even with Giant. After all, it is not like the player in most circumstances are purposely letting themselves get hit. Actually, I'd argue Giant just lets status effects exist at the moment and actually adds more to the game, as they do not apply elemental status to you fast enough at all without Giant. So other than the Dragon's Breath on Nex, you won't really ever see status effects without Giant. Quests and daily quests have been used way too sparsely. Quests are a system that encourages players to do stuff for rewards, and NGS blatantly does not have enough of both daily and non-daily quests. On a normal day, daily quests are completed in 10 minutes. And outside of this, there are very few weeklies. While the game doesn't have to be a game that everyone plays for 8 hours every day, catering to more player types means more money at the end of the day. The mission pass could have been handled better as well, adding more weekly and daily quests, as well as giving us 2 more free day shop passes for a total of 3 on the mission pass. I should mention that the shop pass issue doesn't affect me, as I have saved up many shop passes from base game, but I still support players that can't obtain the passes, as I can understand how annoying it would be to be locked out of the shop. And here are some honourable mentions that I'm either not talking about today because they are minor or nitpicky, or I have talked about them before and or they are something common that everyone knows about, like NGS/Pso2's scuffed launches. And here they are. Gathering feels unintuitive. The tops of trees don't have hitboxes to stand on in Resolve Forest, and perhaps elsewhere. Pixel augments. Some situations where classes feel like they are missing elements of their kit to a noticeable degree. Any monetization issues that exist. I can't really say anything about these, because with the state of the game they all look pretty bad, and also for the most part, I myself do not have an active problem with them. Is there anything I have missed or glossed over? What are your opinions on some of the things I have mentioned here? If you like my content, remember to like and subscribe. If you didn't like it, feel free to tell me why, and downvote the pixels out of my video. I have been RSV, and I am logging out.